If you've ever sat through a biology class, you've probably seen a chart for metabolism that looks like, well, a tangled mess of circles and arrows. It's confusing, it's kind of boring, and honestly, it's not really how your cells actually work. So today, we're going to throw out those old charts. We're going to explore your metabolism as what it really is, a bustling, logical, and incredibly smart city. So let's just compare these two approaches for a second. The old way, right? It's all about memorizing these isolated bubbles and abstract cycles. But our new model, the Metabolic City, is totally different. This isn't about memorization. It's about understanding a deeply interconnected system, one that follows logical rules and has a design so resilient it can handle almost anything. This is how we're going to rebuild metabolism, from the ground up.
All right, first things first. Every city needs roads. And in our metabolic city, the main cargo being shipped around is carbon. The entire system is basically a massive logistics network, all designed to move and transform carbon-based molecules. So let's start by paving the main highways.
The main entrance to the city for fuel is a highway called Glycolysis. Just think of it as the city's main street. When a big 6-carbon truck carrying glucose rolls into town, this is the road it has to take. And over a journey of 10 steps, that one big truck is expertly split into 2 smaller, much more manageable 3-carbon vehicles called pyruvate.
Now I know, 10 steps sounds complicated, but the journey itself, it's actually super simple. The glucose truck enters the city. The highway system splits it in half. 2 smaller pyruvate vehicles exit at the other end. And along the way, the city collects a small toll, a tiny little energy profit of 2 ATP. It's like pocket change, just to keep the lights on.
So after glycolysis, where do our little pyruvate vehicles go? They head straight for the city center, to this big, busy traffic circle known as the Krebs Cycle. Now, this isn't just a demolition zone. Yeah, it's where carbon backbones get broken down to harvest energy, but it's also a critical intersection. Molecules can be pulled off this rotary at any time to go build new parts for the city, like amino acids or fats. It breaks things down and it builds things up.
Now, here's a key rule of the road in our city. Some of these roads are one-way streets. This is all because of a fundamental law of physics called thermodynamics. Think of it like a car rolling down a really steep hill. It releases so much energy that it's practically impossible to just throw it in reverse and drive back up the exact same way. These downhill reactions make sure that once the city starts breaking down sugar, the traffic keeps flowing forward.
This brings up a really fascinating problem, doesn't it? What happens if the city is running low on glucose and needs to make more? If the main highway, Glycolysis, has these one-way streets, you can't just put the cars in reverse and drive backwards. So how does the city get back to the start?
The city's solution is brilliant. It just builds bypasses. For every single one of those irreversible one-way streets, it constructs a special on-ramp going in the other direction, and it uses a completely different set of workers, or enzymes, to do it. This design is genius, because it prevents the city from getting stuck in this wasteful traffic jam, where it's building and breaking down sugar at the very same time. Okay, we've got the roads figured out, but a city isn't just a bunch of highways. It's a whole economy. It needs workers to get all the jobs done, and it needs currency to pay for everything. So let's meet the city's workforce and take a look at its money. The city's workers are enzymes, but instead of having millions of unique specialists for every tiny little job, the cell uses a much smarter approach, kind of like a Swiss Army knife. It has families of enzymes that perform general tasks. Kinases, for example, they just add phosphate tags. Dehydrogenases, they strip away hydrogens. And isomerases, they just reshape molecules. It's an incredibly efficient modular design.
And this super efficient workforce can process all kinds of cargo. It really doesn't matter if you eat carbs or fats or proteins. The city's workers break them all down into one universal adapter molecule called acetyl-CoA. Think of it like a universal power plug. It can take any kind of fuel and convert it into a standard format that plugs right into the city's main power grid.
Now, let's talk about the money. The number one currency of the cell is ATP. This is the city's cash. It's used to pay for absolutely everything instantly, from flexing a muscle to firing a single neuron. But here's the catch. ATP is super unstable, so you can't really store a lot of it. It's pretty much made and spent in the same moment. So if ATP is cash, how does the cell save up large amounts of energy? Well, it uses checks. These molecules, called NADH and FADH2, are high-energy electron carriers. When food gets broken down, the energy is loaded onto these molecules. They hold a ton of value, but they have to be taken to the city's power plant, a special place called the electron transport chain, to be cashed in for spendable ATP. And this is where we see a really clever division of labor. ATP is your cash. It's for instant spending, anywhere in the city. NADH, on the other hand, is a check. It's a store of value that you can only cash in at one specific location, the power plant. This separation of cash and banked value is absolutely key to managing the city's energy flow.
Okay, so the city runs pretty smoothly day to day, but the true test of any design is how it handles a crisis. And let me tell you, the metabolic city is incredibly resilient, with a built-in flexibility that lets it adapt to some really extreme situations.
So let's imagine a starvation scenario. The main glucose shipments just stop coming in. Does the city shut down? Nope. It brilliantly reroutes all of its traffic. It starts shipping fatty acids from its storage depots to use for energy. And the liver, it switches on those special bypass routes we talked about to make new glucose from scratch, all to make sure the city's most important resident, the brain, never, ever runs out of fuel.
That flexibility is just amazing, but the city's architecture isn't totally invincible. Some parts of the system are so critical that they create a bottleneck. So what happens if one of these single points of failure gets taken out?
Well, this is exactly what happens with cyanide poisoning. This terrible toxin doesn't destroy the whole city. It attacks just one single, tiny target, one specific enzyme at the very end of the power plant's assembly line. That's it, just one little piece of the machinery.
But the effect is catastrophic. By blocking that one final step, cyanide causes the entire power grid to fail. All those high-value checks, all that NADH has nowhere to be cached. The production of ATP from the power plant drops to zero. The city runs out of cash in minutes, and that leads to a total systemic collapse. So all this brings us to our final piece of the puzzle. With all these highways and workers and power plants, you have to wonder, who's actually in charge here? Who's making the high-level decisions for the entire city?
Well, let's meet the top-level manager. The city essentially has two opposing managers calling the shots, insulin and glucagon. Insulin is like the construction manager. When resources are high, like right after a meal, it gives the order to store fuel and build new things. Glucagon is the crisis manager. When resources are low, it signals the city to release its stored fuel and prioritize only the most essential services.
So when you really look at it this way, you can see that metabolism is so much more than some diagram in a textbook. It's a living city. It's dynamic. It follows logical rules, and it has been perfected by billions of years of evolution to be almost unbelievably resilient.
And that city, it's operating inside of you at this very moment. As you're watching this and listening and thinking, different districts are lighting up, supply chains are rerouting, and energy is flowing all over the place. So the final question I want to leave you with is this. What part of your metabolic city is working hardest right now?